The idea about Showtime was pretty simple. We wanted to capture the growth of the game of lacrosse from a coast-to-coast perspective, because so many recruiting events and exposure events in the past specifically focused on where the hotbeds were in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. So our goal with Showtime was to capture those great players from traditional markets, but also have a coast-to-coast feel in regards to the growth of lacrosse and all the great lacrosse that was been played across the country, and kind of capture that at this event. So we have kids from the Pacific Northwest at this event, the Southeast, then you have middle of America, everywhere. So we have the best players in the country from coast to coast, and I think we've seen that there are great players everywhere now, and it's not just a regional base. It was actually fun because two of my buddies from Syracuse, Mike Springer and Joe Seglia. Joe Seglia is from my town in Yorktown, New York, who I never played in college lacrosse at Syracuse with, but just a couple years behind me. And Mike Springer, who's from New Jersey, played at Syracuse too, but behind me and never on the same team. But the Syracuse lacrosse community is really cool based on the fact that everyone knows everyone. And we kind of had similar goals and visions of what we wanted to do with this event, make it really intimate, have kids from all across the country come here, but have it in a really cool core setting. And what I mean by that, there's a one field model here. So if you're a 2020, for example, in your graduating class, you play on one field. If you're a 2021, you play on one field. If you're a 2022, you play on one field. So depending on the grad class that you want to watch, there's only one place to find them. And I think that's been a really cool aspect of this event. And then the kids get to know each other. And then the team camaraderie and the ability to play with that same team over the course of a 3-day span, it's really sweet. I think Showtime's grown with the sport of lacrosse. So over the last 12 years, we're seeing a change in lacrosse in terms of the athletes. They're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, and they're so skilled. And I think kids are playing more lacrosse than ever. So when they come to an event like this, you're just amazed at how polished these kids are, and their lacrosse IQ is off the charts. And it makes it really cool to watch, and just the growth of the game. You know, we're watching kids who are just starting off in their high school years, and they're making high-level high school type plays from an IQ standpoint, entry-level college type of plays from an IQ standpoint. So I think the growth of the game in emerging areas has kind of closed the gap with those traditional areas too. So not only do we see talented players from non-traditional areas, we see players who have increased IQ. So I would say from those types of markets, we're seeing a more polished, smarter lacrosse player, bigger, faster, stronger across the board. And Showtime, I think, has always captured that growth in the sport of lacrosse. It's a great reflection to where our sport is in terms of the younger generation. So the sport's in great shape. This event, I've seen some of the great players in college lacrosse over the years attend this event. We've had multiple Tewaaraton winners. Guys like Dylan Malloy have been here. Ben Reeves has been here. So it's pretty sweet. We're looking at the next generation of stars. And you could tell, man, these kids have serious game. We have a strong base of coaches across the country, whether they're high school coaches or club coaches in all different geographical areas in this great nation. And what we do is we tap into those resources and find out where those best players are, and they nominate some of the players that they've seen or they've coached in the past. And then they oftentimes these coaches will give us their contact information in terms of the player, video highlights, and we kind of vet all of that out. And depending on the position of the kid, depending on the availability in that position and in that grad year, if they're good enough and they go through that whole process, we have a whole committee from Showtime that kind of looks over that process as well. So it's not easy because we do limit the numbers, but I will tell you that the players that are nominated by these coaches across the country are always great players that deserve to be here. Unfortunately, there's only a limited amount of spots, and that's what makes the event so great, but it also makes it harder for some of those other players who probably are good enough to be here, just don't have enough spots. When I look at the 2020s in the last 3 days here, amazing midfield play. I mean, that's what's really popped out for me when I watch all these games. I sit down and I look at the athletes, the full field athletic ability of that group, I think stood out. And just guys that could shoot on the run, have tremendous velocity in their shots, and they don't break stride when they're dodging down the alley. I think the midfield group has been really, really strong. Obviously the attack, defense, and goalies are superb players as well, but for me, it was the midfield play in the 2020s. And for the 2021s, just skill, stick skills specifically. I think that group has just a tremendous amount of upside and talent. And when I watch them play, I mean, the attack, the way they move the ball, and the one more in regards to you know, the transition type offense that's been implemented on the field, or if it's the one-on-one play and guys finding teammates and finding seams and defenses on the offensive end, and then the defensive footwork and ability to really understand the game as only freshmen, rising sophomores has been pretty impressive. So 2022s, they're behind me right now, and I'm pumped to watch them the next couple days. For me, selfishly, in calling games for ESPN, I think it's awesome that I get to see so many of these kids that we cover week in and week out in the spring, and just seeing their ability to really flourish at the high level. And for me to kind of go back and say, wow, I saw this kid 3-4 years ago. He was awesome then, and he's getting even better. So I think the sport of lacrosse is in great shape. Over the last 10 years, I think the emerging areas, and specifically out west and in the south, have really done a fantastic job of closing the gap. So for me, I think we're going to see big-time players in the next 10 years come from all different areas. I mean, you look at a place like Utah, for example, that now has Division I lacrosse. They're going to have a young generation that follows the Utes, and I think we're going to see a state like Utah be more prevalent in terms of just being a big fixture in the college game. And California has produced so many great players, and we've had great players here this week. So I think out west we're going to see some fantastic players. I mean, we've seen good ones in the past in college. There's been a lot of guys who've taken their game to another level, whether it's a Drew Snyder from Seattle, Washington, or a Peter Baum from Portland, Oregon, guys who are just incredible college players from non-traditional areas. I think we'll see more of it in terms of like the masses. So I think the game's in great shape. How much bigger, faster, stronger can we get? I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. I'm glad I played when I played, because these kids are just so fit. They take their off-season regimen so seriously. They're well conditioned. You know, they're treating themselves like elite young athletes, where for me it was like, go to the field, stretch, I'm ready to go. I see these guys just razor focused, and I think the future of lacrosse is in great shape. I am Paul Carcaterra, and I help grow the game.